what will happen if there are two Norman Prices. And who knows the havoc they'll cause with fire. Honestly, there can't be two Norman Prices. There doesn't need to be another Norman Price because Derek is already basically a second Norman Price. Not because he's his cousin, because he was based off the same model as Norman, and also because they both have the same personality and caused the Great Fire of Pontypandy together. Derek even listened to Norman when Norman convinced him to go into Jupiter while Norman steals Jupiter and commits underage driving, theft, and trespassing at the same time. And why are you listening to Norman, Derek? You do know that your cousin is a criminal, Derek. Just because Derek's Norman's cousin doesn't mean that Derek can be Norman's theft buddy. When I said theft, I meant stealing Jupiter. By the way, I mean a little treasure. Honestly, Derek does have his moments. Whenever there's a crime that you can't believe Norman is doing, like actually committing underage driving or trying to burn the village down, Derek is involved in it.
But I'm your little treasure.
Well, Norman, you would be, but only if you didn't set anything on fire, Norman, or crash your go-kart into the sea, or trying to set off a fire alarm and putting people in danger. Of course, Elvis has to do a doofus thing. Well, the fireman and woman have to get the key out of the plug hole, because teamwork always helps. Every problem you've caused, Norman Price, doesn't make you that Norman. Apparently everyone accepts Norman's apology. The two shake hands, while the fireman annoyed, and apparently this episode taught us how selfish Norman can get. We've seen Norman cause the Great Fire of Pontypandy. We've seen him steal Jupiter, and we've also seen Norman cause multiple fires. But this is the first time Norman's done it to James before, like he did in Dinosaur Footprints, but he's never actually put Derek's life in danger too much. I know Derek helped Norman cause the Great Fire of Pontypandy, but I just like Caillou. So, as always, let's commentate again. Norman spent the episode lied to Derek and made up a story about Pontypandy pansies, but when Derek went up in the mountain, he realized that Norman was faking it. In the end, Norman can take a hike.